Hitler personally awarded him the Iron Cross. The British gave him an MBE. He's the only person in history decorated by both sides in World War II. And neither side ever knew the truth. This is the story of the greatest con artist in military history. A man who created 27 fictional spies, fooled the Third Reich for 4 years, changed the course of D-Day, faked his own death, and disappeared for 36 years. His name was Juan Pujol García. The Germans called him their most valuable agent in Britain. They had no idea he'd never set foot there. In early 1944, the fate of millions hung on a single question. Where would the Allies invade France? Hitler had 58 divisions stretched along the Atlantic Wall. Get the answer right, and Germany could crush the invasion at the waterline. Get it wrong, and the war was lost. German intelligence was desperate for information from inside Britain. They had one source they trusted completely, a Spanish businessman living in London who ran a network of 27 agents across Britain. His reports arrived weekly, detailed, precise, invaluable. Wehrmacht officers marked his intelligence with red pencil. Priority distribution. His name appeared in 62 high command intelligence summaries. They called him Alaric. He was their eyes inside Fortress Britain. But Alaric didn't exist. Not really. The man sending those reports sat in a cramped London townhouse, inventing an entire fictional world. Every agent was fake. Every report was fabricated. Every piece of intelligence was designed to mislead. And it worked so perfectly that German high command stopped recruiting other spies in Britain. Why bother? They already had the best. Juan Pujol García was born in Barcelona in 1912. He grew up watching Spain tear itself apart. The Spanish Civil War taught him a lesson he'd never forget. Fascism and communism were two sides of the same murderous coin. By 1940, with Europe burning, Pujol had made a decision. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained in espionage. He was a hotel manager and chicken farmer. But he was going to help defeat Hitler, alone if necessary. The problem was simple. Nobody wanted his help. Pujol approached the British embassy in Madrid 3 times. They turned him away 3 times. He had no credentials, no intelligence background, no connections. Just an idea. He would pose as a Nazi sympathizer, get recruited by German intelligence, and feed them false information. The British weren't interested. Fine. He'd do it himself. In January 1941, Pujol walked into the German embassy in Madrid. He presented himself as a Spanish government official with Nazi sympathies who traveled frequently to Britain. It was a complete lie. He'd never been to Britain. He didn't work for the Spanish government. But Pujol understood something crucial about intelligence work. People see what they want to see. The Germans wanted agents in Britain. So they saw one. They gave him secret ink, questionnaires, 3,000 pesetas, and a code name. Alaric. Now Pujol had a problem. He'd convinced the Germans he could spy on Britain. But he couldn't get into Britain. The British had rejected him. He had no visa, no contacts, no way in. Most people would have quit. Pujol went to the Lisbon Public Library instead. He checked out travel guides to Britain. He bought a blue guide to England, a map of the London rail network, and a Portuguese publication called The British Fleet. He studied these like medical textbooks. He memorized British terminology, military organization, and geography. Then, from Lisbon, he started sending reports to the Germans claiming he was in London. His first report arrived in Germany in July 1941. The Wehrmacht intelligence officers read it carefully. The level of detail impressed them. The information seemed legitimate. They wanted more. Pujol's reports grew more elaborate. He invented his first subagent, a Portuguese traveling salesman living in Britain. Then a Swiss businessman. Then a Venezuelan student. Soon he had a pilot in the RAF, a military officer, a member of a militant Welsh separatist group, and an American soldier stationed in Britain. None of them existed. Pujol created their personalities, their motivations, their backgrounds. He wrote their reports in different voices. He made up their expenses, travel costs, bribes, equipment. The Germans paid everything. But Pujol was working from guidebooks in Lisbon. He made mistakes. He reported that Glaswegians would do anything for a liter of wine, in a city where people drank whiskey and beer. He described dock workers in Liverpool starting work at midnight, based on train timetables he'd misread. He reported British convoy movements by studying shipping notices in public newspapers and adding fictional details. Incredibly, the Germans didn't catch on. They saw what confirmed their beliefs and ignored what didn't fit. In London, British intelligence was confused. German submarines seemed to be waiting for convoys that didn't exist. Wehrmacht analysts were issuing warnings about non-existent troop movements in Britain. Someone was feeding the Germans elaborate false intelligence. MI5 launched an investigation to find this phantom agent. When they discovered the truth, some amateur in Lisbon was running a one-man disinformation campaign from a library. They had two options: shut him down or recruit him. In April 1942, MI5 brought Pujol to London. Finally, after 16 months of trying, he was inside Britain. They gave him a new code name, Garbo, after Greta Garbo, because he was the greatest actor in the world. They gave him a house, a salary, and a handler named Thomas Harris. Then they turned his network of fictional agents into Britain's most valuable weapon. The Germans still believed Garbo was their spy. They had no idea MI5 controlled him now. Every report Garbo sent was crafted in collaboration with British intelligence. The information was carefully designed, accurate enough to seem legitimate, but useless or misleading in practice. Garbo reported real troop locations days after those troops had moved. He described military equipment accurately but got the destinations wrong. He sent crucial information that arrived too late to be actionable. Then he apologized profusely for the delays, explaining his agents had been cautious or communications had failed. The Germans sympathized. They increased his funding. By 1944, Garbo's fictional network had grown to 27 agents. The Germans were paying him $340,000, equivalent to over $6 million today. He had agents in London, Liverpool, Glasgow, Brighton, and Dover. He had contacts in the military, the government, and American forces. His reports averaged 2,000 words. He sent over 500 radio messages and 315 letters. Wehrmacht intelligence officers marked his material with red pencil for priority distribution. Hitler's headquarters included Garbo's intelligence in their situation reports. As far as German high command was concerned, Garbo was the most important intelligence asset they had in Britain. Then came Operation Fortitude, the largest deception operation in military history. The Allies needed Hitler to believe the D-Day invasion would hit Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. They needed him to keep divisions in Calais even after the Normandy landings began. Garbo was central to this deception. His reports would have to be perfect. One mistake would unravel everything. Millions of lives depended on selling the lie. In the months before D-Day, Garbo's messages intensified. His agents reported massive troop concentrations in southeast England, exactly where you'd stage an invasion of Calais. They described American General George Patton commanding the 1st U.S. Army Group in Kent. Every detail was fictional. Patton was in England, but his army group didn't exist. The troops Garbo described were inflatable tanks and dummy landing craft. German reconnaissance planes photographed them from high altitude. They looked real. Garbo's reports confirmed it. The Germans believed. On June 5, 1944, the night before D-Day, Garbo faced the most critical moment of his career. The invasion would begin in hours. His credibility with the Germans depended on warning them, but warn them too early, and the invasion could fail. The balance was razor thin. At 3 a.m., Garbo sent an urgent message. His agents had detected massive movement toward the coast. An invasion was imminent. The message was carefully timed to arrive too late for the Germans to respond. When the Wehrmacht duty officer received it, Allied troops were already crossing the channel. But the message proved Garbo had tried to warn them. His credibility remained intact. The real deception came on June 9th. The Normandy landings were 3 days old. German commanders debated whether to rush reinforcements to Normandy or hold divisions in Calais in case Normandy was a feint. Garbo sent the longest, most detailed message of his career. He'd held a meeting of his entire network, he claimed. All 27 agents had provided reports. The conclusion was clear. Normandy was a diversion. The main invasion would hit Pas de Calais within days. The message landed on German high command desks at 3 a.m. on June 10th. Hitler read it personally. He believed it completely. He ordered divisions to remain in Calais. 19 infantry divisions and 2 armored divisions sat waiting for an invasion that would never come. For 7 crucial weeks, while Allied forces consolidated their Normandy beachhead, over 150,000 German troops remained frozen in place at Calais. They waited for Garbo's invasion. When it never materialized, German intelligence still didn't suspect Garbo. They assumed Allied plans had changed. His credibility remained unshaken. On July 29, 1944, Juan Pujol García received a message from his German handlers. Wehrmacht intelligence wanted to recognize his extraordinary service to the Reich. Hitler himself had approved the award. Juan Pujol García, British double agent, MI5 operative, the man responsible for deceiving Germany about D-Day, was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class. It was transmitted by radio. The actual medal would be presented after Germany won the war. Germany didn't win the war. 4 months later, in November 1944, King George VI approved Juan Pujol García for membership in the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. He received his MBE in a private ceremony. No public announcement. No newspaper coverage. Garbo's work remained classified. He became the only person in history decorated by both sides in World War II. Both for the same work. The war ended in May 1945. Germany surrendered. Allied intelligence officers combed through captured German intelligence files, looking for security breaches. They found hundreds of references to Alaric, Garbo's German codename. The Germans had never suspected him. Not once. Even in defeat, even with their intelligence services in ruins, the truth never emerged. As far as Wehrmacht survivors knew, their best agent had simply gone silent after the war. They assumed he'd died or fled. They never learned he'd been British all along. But peace brought a new problem for Juan Pujol García. German intelligence officers were being interrogated. Some would eventually be released. If any of them tried to contact their former star agent, they might discover the truth. Worse, if Soviet intelligence learned about Garbo's role, he could become a target. The Cold War was beginning. Pujol's work during the war had been too effective. He was a liability now. In 1949, with MI5's help, Juan Pujol García disappeared. He moved to Angola and spread word that he died of malaria. A death certificate was filed. British intelligence listed him as deceased. His family believed it. His German handlers, if they ever checked, would believe it too. But Pujol was alive. He settled in Venezuela, in the small town of Laguneles. He opened a bookstore and gift shop. He remarried. He lived quietly. He told no one about his past. For 36 years, one of the most significant figures in World War II intelligence history was presumed dead. His story was classified. His role in D-Day remained secret. Historians didn't know his name. MI5 files stayed sealed. The man who had fooled Hitler was managing a bookshop in Venezuela, and nobody knew. In 1984, a British writer named Nigel West was researching double agents for a book. He was studying MI5 files that had recently been declassified. He found references to Agent Garbo, the star of Operation Fortitude, the architect of the D-Day deception. The files indicated Garbo had died in 1949, but something didn't sit right with West. He started investigating. He tracked down people who'd known Garbo during the war. He followed leads through Angola. Eventually, he found a trail to Venezuela. On February 14, 1984, Pujol's 72nd birthday, Nigel West knocked on the door of a small gift shop in Lagunillas. Juan Pujol García answered. He was alive. He'd been alive the entire time. West convinced him to tell his story. In 1985, Pujol traveled back to Britain for the first time in 40 years. He met with Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He visited the beaches at Normandy. He saw the memorials to the soldiers whose lives his deception had saved. Veterans who'd landed on D-Day shook his hand. Historians who'd studied the war without knowing his name finally understood the full scope of Operation Fortitude. Pujol gave interviews. He was humble about his role. He insisted he wasn't a hero. He'd simply wanted to fight fascism the only way he could. He'd gotten lucky. He'd had help from brilliant MI5 officers. The real heroes were the soldiers who'd stormed the beaches. But historians knew better. Garbo's deception had been the crucial element. Without him, Operation Fortitude might have failed. Without Fortitude, those 19 divisions would have reinforced Normandy. Casualties on D-Day could have doubled. The invasion might have been pushed back to the sea. Juan Pujol García died on October 10, 1988, in Caracas, Venezuela. He suffered a stroke. He was 76 years old. This time, his death was real. He was buried in Coroni, a small coastal town in Venezuela, far from the battlefields he'd influenced, far from the intelligence offices where he'd crafted his deceptions. His headstone bears no mention of his wartime service, just his name and dates. Britain's MI5 released more details about Operation Garbo in the decades after his death. The full scope of his achievement became clear. He'd sent more than 300 messages in the final months before D-Day. His fictional network had consumed massive German intelligence resources. The Abwehr had stopped recruiting other agents in Britain because Garbo provided everything they needed. He'd single-handedly convinced Hitler that 1st U.S. Army Group threatened Calais. Military historians now estimate his deception kept 150,000 German troops away from Normandy during the critical early days of the invasion. That's not speculation. That's documented in German military orders. The impact goes beyond numbers. Garbo proved that intelligence warfare could change the outcome of battles without firing a shot. His work established principles still used today: the importance of credibility, the power of confirmation bias, the value of feeding an adversary information they want to believe. Every intelligence agency studies Operation Garbo. It's taught at military academies. It's analyzed in strategic planning courses. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Juan Pujol García's story is this: he got away with everything. He fooled Nazi Germany for 4 years. He received their highest decorations. He was never caught, never suspected, never exposed. When the war ended, he walked away. He faked his death, started a new life, and lived in peace for decades. No other intelligence officer accomplished anything comparable. Most spies get caught or killed or burned out. Pujol retired to run a bookstore. In 2007, Spain finally recognized his service. The Spanish Defense Ministry erected a plaque at his birthplace in Barcelona. It's a small memorial. Nothing dramatic. Just recognition that a chicken farmer from Barcelona once changed the course of history by lying better than anyone else. He saw a war that needed fighting and enemies that needed defeating. He had no training, no support, and no plan beyond walking into an embassy and pretending to be someone he wasn't. Then he invented 27 fictional people, convinced the Third Reich they were real, and misdirected the German war machine at the most critical moment of the 20th century. Juan Pujol García was Germany's top spy. He was Britain's most valuable double agent. He was the only person decorated by both sides. And when it was over, he disappeared into Venezuela and sold books for 36 years. He got away with everything. Because sometimes the greatest victories aren't won with bullets or bombs. They're won with imagination, audacity, and the ability to tell a lie so perfect that even Hitler believes it. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. If you want to hear more forgotten chapters of history, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Drop a comment telling us which World War II story you want to hear next.